Hello, this is Heather Hoffman, and I have a bright rainbow heart card to share with you today. It's a Slimline tall card. I'm using lots of Reverse Confetti cardstock, and then these little tiny stitched center hearts from the XOXO Hearts Confetti Cuts. This is a great way to use up lots of your paper scraps. I've kind of paired together different shades of kind of two tones of each color, and I went ahead and just spent a good bit of time just slowly die cutting these out. It was kind of relaxing, and just one or two at a time with each color. And I alternated dark to light, light to dark, as you can see there. It just adds a little bit of interest to the design. And I've created my slim folding white card base using Premier Polar white cardstock. I put a little bit of post-it tape on the inside just to hold it closed. Because as I add all these little pieces on here, I don't want it to kind of pop open and for them to slide off, because I want to be able to get them all adhered evenly in place. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm adhering the smaller hearts into the center of the larger ones. You can see I kind of have my card design, how I'm going to put it on the card, kind of laid out. It just kind of helped me keep track of it in my mind. And I went ahead and added a little bit of liquid glue just down the center of each of those hearts to adhere in place. And then I'm going to come back, now that I have all those adhered, I'm just going to pop up the sides a little bit just to make sure the glue hasn't set. And it actually was drying pretty quickly on here. So I think in hindsight, I would have done half of them and then popped it up just to make sure that it hadn't glued down so much. But I didn't want them super high. I just wanted a little bit of dimension with that. So I went ahead and skipped ahead, and I have all those done. So now I'm going to take all of these, lay them out on my card, just make sure I've got them all centered and even in the way I want. You could probably measure this out or use some grid paper if you wanted to be super precise. I'm kind of just choosing to eyeball it. So once I have everything kind of laid in where I want, I'm going to do the same thing with that liquid glue, just a little line down the center. I'm going to start with the kind of the outer corners there, and then finish that whole bottom row, and then go ahead and do the same thing and finish that top row. And what that's going to provide is kind of a baseline for me to follow. Now that I have those top and bottom ones in place, I'm going to kind of follow the same idea. I'm going to do the center row, and then I can kind of fill in the other ones in between. But I have everything fairly well laid out where I want it. And if I need to make any quick adjustments, that liquid glue on there is going to allow me to still be able to slide them just slightly if I need to. All right, when I tipped it up, I realized I'd missed that one on the top, so I went ahead and finished that. Now I'm going to add just a very simple sentiment. I love the Word Up stamp set. They're super thin, great for just little thin heat embossed sentiments. I'm using a little bit of midnight cardstock, and I keep some of this just on hand, kind of at all times, because I like to heat emboss sentiments on black cardstock. And keeping just the smaller pieces and scraps is perfect for this. And then I can stamp, heat emboss it with a bigger piece that's easier to hold on to, and then just trim off that sentiment once it's finished. So I used my embossing tool, powder tool, embossing buddy, whatever you want to call that. It's just a powder tool that you put on. It's kind of an anti-static. It keeps that embossing powder from sticking anywhere that I don't want it to. And then I can stamp, sprinkle on my white heat embossing powder, and go ahead and heat set that with my heat gun. And then I just pull out my paper trimmer and trim that into a nice thin simple strip, and then I can kind of brush off that extra powder and then kind of plan where I'm going to lay that. I really liked it over those yellow hearts, so I went with that. So I trimmed it down, and then I'm just using my scissors to trim it into a banner shape. If you haven't done this before, it's a really simple kind of just cut straight in and then cut from each corner into that center point you cut. And you get a perfect banner, really simple and quick and easy. All right, and that's where it's going to go. So I'm pulling out, I have some foam adhesive in little thin strips, so I don't have to do as much trimming down. And what I'm going to do is trim off little bits that'll sit in the center of those yellow hearts. I didn't want to go all the way across because I wanted to keep some of that dimension from the hearts. So by placing it, laying it there so I could kind of see where I put my foam adhesive, I could place that perfectly to fit in there. All right, there's that sentiment on there. Final thing that I decided to do was just go around, now that the glue is dried on that, and just pop up those larger edges on each of the hearts as well. And it adds just a tiny bit more dimension, but still not a lot of bulk and thickness as well. All right, that's it for today. Thanks so much for coming by. Hope you have a wonderful day.